friend and servant. No longer do I call you servants, for the servant doesn't know what his Lord does, but I have called you friends. For everything that I heard from my Father, I have made known to you. John 15:15, Western English Bible. I will focus only on two conditions from the aforementioned verse, servant and friend. The word servant means limitation. It conveys the feeling of fear. The servant can't have his own thought. The servant can't have his own opinion. The servant can't have his own philosophy. Everything is imposed on him. Christ says, "No longer do I call you servants, for the servant doesn't know what his Lord does, but I have called you friends. For everything that I heard from my Father, I have made known to you." If you ask contemporary people whether there is a world beyond this one, they'll say, "We don't know. All we know is that we eat 3 times a day, we go to sleep, we get up, we travel, we fight, we slaughter each other, but we don't know why we do this. The Master knows." This doesn't only apply to those in the world that we call unfaithful, but also to religious people who also slaughter and fight each other. Some will say that religious people are more pious. The Crusades and the Inquisition reveal the degree to which religious people are pious and cultured. They are people of ignorance, but with titles of pious servants and pious slaves. Christ says, "No longer do I call you servants, because everything that I heard from my Father, I have revealed to you." A friend is someone with whom you can share your thoughts, with whom you can reveal your heart, with whom you can reason philosophically, with whom you can have an exchange. Consequently, when a religious society forms on the basis of servitude, of obedience, everyone says, "We have to be obedient." What do we have to obey? Everything they tell us. They say about someone, "He's an excellent servant." Why? Because he does everything they commanded him to do. But a religious society based on friendship requires serving the following maxim: "Everything that I heard from my Father, I have made known to you." Of course, contemporary people don't know what Christ said to his disciples and think that everything he spoke refers only to the salvation. And now they say, "Believe and you'll be saved, both you and your household." But salvation is a science for sick people. I send those who want to save themselves to the hospital. Doctors are the people of salvation, and they study all those methods and principles by which people can heal themselves from their illnesses. You speak to a person about social reformation, about virtues, but he asks you, "Are you saved?" I tell him, "Since you speak to me about salvation, then you're still in the hospital. You're not saved yet. But once you get out, you'll be saved." Well, that's all good. When you get out of the hospital once, what use will you have if you think about it again? Consequently, the condition you'll find yourself in after you get out of the hospital will be of the school. So, the school is a place for healthy people. I don't deal with hospitals. Hence, when someone gets sick, I send him to the hospital to study salvation there. And when he becomes healthy, I send him to the great school so he can learn to attain knowledge. And so, school is for healthy people, and the hospital is for the sick. Upon leaving the hospital, the person must go into the world to work. But in order to get out, he must have a basic knowledge about the great living nature. What does this life, of which we have understanding, consist of? How did it come into existence on earth? Nobody knows how this life came into being. Notice that I don't talk about this either, but I talk about its manifestation, about its forms, about the essence of life. Consequently, the universe, along with its forms, is one giant living organism in which life manifests. This life can be purely mechanical, that is, without man taking part in it. And it can also be psychological, in which man does take part. If you're a servant, you can't take part in life. If you're a friend, you will take part. There's an exchange that takes place between two friends, not only in thoughts, but also in feelings. Whereas between master and servant, there is a brute force that gets imposed. The master orders the servant to do this and that. When the master eats, the servant must stand straight on his feet. He mustn't think anything about himself, but needs to be ready to do his master's will within a moment's notice. And when contemporary people talk to me about the Lord, about Christ, about the other world, by doing so they cover up a false doctrine which they serve. If they preach about Christ while continuing their slavery, this is a false and dangerous doctrine in the world. The Lord abhors such a doctrine. And when we preach a doctrine based on friendship, we have to know what it is. We have to apply it and know what it talks about and why. We shouldn't be like that American Negro preacher who preached about how God created man and how he dried him on a grill for 3 days after creating him. They asked him, "Well, how did God create this grill?" "That's none of your business," he replied. Every organization, every system is a kind of grill on which the Lord cures contemporary people today. When we start asking, "Where is this grill from?" they answer, "That's none of your business." It would be much easier to explain how the grill is made than it would be to explain how the person is made. I can explain to you how the creation of the grill came about much more easily than I would be able to explain the appearance of man. And now they tell you, "This is none of your business, that's none of your business," and you stand around like servants waiting for orders. This is not a new doctrine. It's not a divine doctrine. The divine doctrine implies a mutual understanding between people's minds and hearts. If such an understanding exists, Christ is within you, and he will tell you everything he heard from his Father. If you don't have these two dispositions, you'll be servants, and you won't understand the inner meaning of life. Then life will manifest as a kind of necessity, as eternal suffering, and that's why you'll say, "Man was born to suffer." We, however, will only suffer until we learn all the conditions for passing over from slavery toward friendship, because slavery is something that we impose on ourselves. Christ says, "Everything that I heard from my Father, I have made known to you." Well, all right. If I start telling you everything that I heard from my Father, you would say, like that Turk, "If all this is true, it's a giant lie." And when the Bulgarians want to say that someone knows a lot, they say, "He knows how to lie a lot." So the Bulgarians consider every well-educated person a liar. Let's consider these two conditions: slavery and friendship. Slavery is rooted in fear and all the contemporary sciences rest on this fear, from time immemorial until now, until the new doctrine, the doctrine of friendship. If I meet someone, I would ask him, "What are you? Are you Orthodox?" "Yes, I'm Orthodox." "Are you a servant in the church or a friend? Do you know anything?" "No." "The priests know. Other people know." "Then you're an Orthodox servant." I meet someone else and ask him, "What are you?" "An evangelist." "Do you understand anything from what you hear?" "No. Those who interpret these things are the ones who understand." "Then you too are a servant in the evangelical church." In the same way, we can eventually figure out that all people are servants. When some people meet, they start arguing about who knows more, and they say, "Our preacher says this, our priest says that," and so on. They bicker on and until they get into an argument and start fighting about which master knows more. These good things that God gave you, just as He gave the light that comes from the sun, should be the same for everyone. In the same way, the divine teaching must be used equally by everyone. Everyone remains free to develop, whether he's a snowdrop plant, a thorn, a rose, or whatever. If you hinder him, you'll resemble that donkey who trampled all the flowers in the field when he went looking for his food. Each one of you has to ask himself, "Am I a servant or a friend?" I speak to you as friends and not as servants. I acknowledge only one powerful authority in the world, the authority of God. I acknowledge only one powerful authority, the authority of love. I acknowledge only one powerful authority, the authority of wisdom. I acknowledge only one powerful authority, the authority of righteousness. I acknowledge only one powerful authority, the authority of virtue. Every other doctrine that doesn't rest on these principles is fraudulent. It's something that the world has already experienced and can continue experiencing. All the bloodshed and all the disturbances in societies are because of this false teaching, which doesn't rest on these virtues. If I told you the following two statements, hate and love, and don't hate and don't love, what would you understand by these two principles? These are two mathematical quantities. How would you interpret the words don't hate and don't love? They represent a negative quantity with a minus sign, but they also show a positive principle and mean don't love the hatred with which you hate, because when you love hatred, you give it power. In the second condition, the words hate and love mean hate the hatred. But in order to hate the hatred, it means to hate the love, and only then will you be healed. A person can find life only when he hates love. Now you'll find yourselves in a contradiction and say, "How strange." Well, this is how you begin in life. You hate someone so he can love you. This is a common principle. It's the way it occurs in the world. And indeed, when you hate someone, he begins to love you. He alters this energy and you make him work for you. I will give you two modern terms that get used in contemporary political parties: production and consumption. Whoever produces more but consumes less becomes wealthy. And whoever produces less but consumes more becomes poor. Consequently, in order to become wealthy, we need to consume less. However, when the markets fill up with goods and there are fewer consumers and then producers, then this gives rise to a crisis in a given sector. Now, for instance, there is a crisis when it comes to butter. We should produce neither too much nor too little. Nature doesn't tolerate this, but we should produce as much as we consume. Then I apply this principle in mathematics the following way. The shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. Why is this so? They say this is how it's written in mathematics. No, this isn't all there is, because the straight line rests on a certain law. There is a force along the straight line which wants to save time and space. Hence, it chooses the shortest distance. And so, when we want to save space and time, we must choose the straight line. The straight line is a law for saving both space and time in which we live, and in that position we save energy. If we choose a longer line, we would use more time, more space, and in that position, we would also expend more energy. I told many people to save energy, but to use up time. However, the wisest thing in life is the ability to expend time, space, and energy equally. The shortest distance that unites servitude and friendship is the straight line. If a person decides to bypass the straight line, thereby taking an alternate route from servitude to friendship, he will end up circling these 2 points for thousands of years. Consequently, we have to solve the issue like this: to choose the shortest distance between servitude and friendship, and to travel along it, and it'll be a straight line. Now, there is a suggestive energy that has been accumulating within many of you for thousands of years, which now finds itself in a torpedo-like condition. It is found in your very being. It's unorganized, and that's why it must be transformed. This energy can be transformed only when we become friends and learn those great laws that work in friendships. For instance, take the law of love. Contemporary people think they already learned the law of love, but they're only at the very beginning of this great law. The young woman who is thinking of marrying first creates her ideal. She starts living with it. She starts putting it on jewelry and powdering herself. And she looks in the mirror every day, examining both herself and her ideal. She becomes prettier every day until she finally marries. She marries and this illusion fades. Children appear, but they don't understand her philosophy and they begin their life anew from A to B. The mother puts all her hopes in them and says to herself, "At least they will understand my philosophy." But they grow up and, like their mother, end up in front of the mirror. People stand before the mirror for thousands of years and say, "My son and daughter will learn the art of living." Finally, the mirror breaks. Do not marry off your sons and daughters this way, but teach them how to be friends, not servants. The mother teaches her daughter how to dress nicely, to deck herself with jewels and fashionable hats, to get new shoes, but she doesn't give her what is most essential in life. When her daughter marries and becomes unhappy, her mother wonders why she's unhappy. Why does she wonder? She herself didn't learn the art of friendship. That gentleman who comes for your daughter is like a cattle dealer who wants to buy himself a cow. He comes, they show him the cow, he strokes her back, examining her here and there. He gives her 5 pats on top, 5 on the bottom, and finally he buys the cow. Everyone rejoices because they sold the cow. Tomorrow your cow will be completely milked and they'll go looking for another cow to replace it. This is also how it is with your daughters. A gentleman comes along who wants to marry your daughter. He takes her, but he'll sell her the very next day. Hardly 5 years go by and nothing remains of your daughter. She no longer resembles that beautiful Ganka. Her flesh withered away. She has a hunch. Her teeth fell out. This is a fact that I can prove to you. I say, someone touched your Ganka. You say, we should preach to her the doctrine of salvation, so she and her household can be saved. But how? They should go to church and pray to God. Well, since you've been standing in the church for 2,000 years, did you find something there? The church is the wisest, the most ideal society in which, upon entering, you have to come out of it completely transformed, extraordinary. It's not a structure made of stones. Let's understand this correctly. Oftentimes they ask me, do you go to church? I don't go. So you're not a Christian. I'm not. I'm not one of those Christians who worship stones. I don't believe in any stones. They'll say, now here's a real crack-brained man. Well, that's good. You, who are the wisest, the most spiritual people, show me your culture. I'm willing to accept it and renounce my own. But if my crack-brained nature stands higher than your wisdom, then I won't renounce it. Paul says, for the foolishness of God is wiser than man's wisdom. I would rather be associated with the foolishness of God than the philosophy of men. I'm under no illusions, but I want to inform you, so you know that you need to check all the knowledge you have. You will say, that's a difficult issue. Checking these things is the easiest issue. You need to draw a straight line from servitude toward friendship. This doctrine is not for simple people. It's neither for slaves nor for servants. It's for heroic people who want to be friends with God, who want to work, to love, to show affection. You say, ha, friends with God? Yes, we can all be friends with God. Abraham was friends with God, which is why everyone honors him. There's nobody else mentioned in the Bible like Abraham. Only Abraham was friends with God. The present-day believers will say, this only applies to Abraham. Only he can be friends with God. He's an exception. Why was Abraham friends with God? When he was told to sacrifice his son to God, he didn't hesitate and went to make the offering. You will say, that's a stupid situation. In that case, offering your son as a sacrifice means going to bury the seed into the ground. And so, only human seed gets sown into the ground. Paul says, so a human seed and a spiritual seed rises. So a human body and a spiritual body rises. So, you have to sacrifice yourself. You have to give everything you have to God. You will object. These sacrifices are what brought us to this plight. The wife says, there isn't a thing I haven't sacrificed for my husband. One cannot do without sacrifice in this world. What you give is given out of fear, and it can't be called sacrifice. Only the friend can offer a sacrifice. Someone says, I offer a sacrifice. Are you a servant? Yes. You don't offer anything. You never offered a sacrifice. Only a friend can offer a sacrifice, and that sacrifice is wise. How can we offer a sacrifice? If you have to ask, you're not a friend. The first thing that is necessary is for man to free himself from those slave-like feelings that agitate him. You sit and wonder whether the Lord forgave us, whether we overstepped his laws. This is the condition of a servant who sits and wonders whether the master will pay him and how much. No, the friend can never doubt his friend. A word uttered by a friend is a word that rests on that eternal basis from above. Now, I'm going to tell you an ancient story in order to clarify my thought, and so I can make a change in this philosophical thought. A young king lived in an ancient kingdom who was a young man and was well known throughout the entire kingdom, even outside it. He was well known for his remarkable works, for he wrote excellently, and everyone talked about him, about his talent, about the new things he wrote, and so on. In the same kingdom there lived the daughter of a poor peasant, who distinguished herself by her virtues. When the young king decided to marry, he thought about taking this poor peasant woman as a wife, who was renowned for her virtues. One day, he decided to visit her. So he loaded up his camels with precious things, the nicest garments, gifts, various precious stones, oils, and other things, and he hoped that she would readily agree to his proposal to make her a queen, so she could enjoy such privileges. He thought this would be a boon to her, which is why he showed up directly before her, without sending any matchmakers. The young woman said to him, "I can't marry you. The garments you bring me can't compare with the garments my soul wears. The precious stones you bring can't compare to the ones I have on my head, which are crafted by my own virtues. I can't be a queen in your kingdom, which is why you should seek a nobler and better person than myself." You'll say, "Look at how stupid that young woman is. She would have had automobiles. She would have had everything." That peasant, that farmer, had philosophical and divine thoughts regarding himself, and he imparted them to his daughter. Feeling disheartened, the royal son returned to his father and said he wouldn't want to marry anyone else if that young woman refuses. The father wondered how that poor peasant girl refused the king. The son grew old, while the father wondered what to do with him. He summoned his high priest and asked him to find a middle way to persuade the peasant girl to take his son. The high priest said, "I will pray to God to see what he will tell me." The high priest began to read prayers, and he heard the following: "The next time you come to me with prayer, you need to come with a lit candle." The high priest says, "Yes, but I ran out of oil. I gave it away to the people." "You sold it because you wanted to gain something. But now, go to that poor young woman to get some of her oil." He goes to the poor young woman to ask for some oil, but she says, "I don't give oil to the kind of high priests who give away their own. My oil is only for my subjects who live within me. If you come and live in my kingdom, I will give you some, but I won't come near your kingdom." The high priest returns to the king and says, "The poor young woman doesn't want to come to us, but she says we should go to her." And today, everyone prays to the Lord so he can come and live in their kingdom. The Lord won't come to your kingdom, and he won't give you his oil. Even if all the Orthodox people gathered together, he still wouldn't give any of his oil. He says, "You sold the first oil I gave you and bought chickens and clothes, which is why I won't give you any." It is namely because of the lack of this living oil that the diseases and neurasthenia spreads among the people. And so, we have to return, but the friend shouldn't come to a servant and turn into a servant. But the friend must go to a friend, and they should become friends. They want to return us to the old beliefs, but this cannot happen. Can a person return to his old beliefs that he had during his early years in childhood, when he was 1, 5, and 10 years old? This is not in the order of things. We can't return back, but we must move forward in our evolution. I often tell you that we need to unite our mind and heart into one. But how? The mind is something invisible, as is the heart. That feeling within us which speaks of love is something invisible. You say, "I love someone." Can you demonstrate that feeling? Some say it cannot be proven. No, that feeling can be proven. When a young woman comes to love someone, her face becomes pink, and the color pink shows that love has begun to work. When that egotistical love becomes active, the color begins to change. It darkens, becoming more cherry-colored. In its vibrations, love also changes. You say, "Show me what love is." Whatever is shown is not real, but whatever is real in love is felt. Whatever is seen isn't real, but whatever is thought is real. If you touch my hand and feel warmth and softness, life doesn't consist of that warmth and softness. The warmth and softness are only conditions through which the inner life manifests. If I get into a cart, my life is not in the cart. However, the cart is merely a condition. You say, "He's thinking about the cart and how it turns." Yes, but there is a huge difference between the turning of the cart and my life. Christ says, "For everything that I heard from my Father, I have made known to you." Why? Because you are my friends. If you adjust your feelings, your minds, this friendship will be able to manifest. I take the word friendship very broadly. From a purely phrenological point of view, the feeling of friendship has its own center, and where it manifests, it has a mark on the lips, on the forehead. One can easily find out who is a friend. Bring me a person whom I have never seen, and I'll tell you whether the feeling of friendship is developed in him or not. These aren't abstract reflections, but every feeling manifests in nature. We modern people are a written book. Learn how to read it. This young woman who examines herself in the mirror every day does a very good thing, because the mirror can be used to read. It's a reflection. Upon the first reading, you'll see whether your nose is long or short, whether it's flattened or wide. If your nose is short, it's a decimal or a simple fraction. That is, a fraction of the whole unit. Hence, everywhere there is a fraction, add as many units as you need to make the denominator equal to the numerator. If you're a friend, your nose needs to constitute a certain mathematical quantity. If your nose has a length of 2 centimeters, you can't become a friend at all, but you'll only be a servant. Do you know what kind of nose is the one that is only 2 centimeters long? See how long of a nose the animals have. You'll say, "One can do without a nose too." A person who begins to think about friendship has a nose that gradually becomes bigger and more symmetrical, because friendship is based on the law of understanding, perception, and wisdom. Before anything else, the friend must be smart, wise, and filled with love. By the word love, I don't mean only the divine kind, but love that encompasses everything. So, if your nose is flattened and has a width down below that is only 1 centimeter, you can't become any kind of friend at all. I'm not talking about your noses, but I refer to those distorted forms that are manifestations of things from the inner world. When someone's nose is flattened, this shows that his heart is also flattened, and he's unable to love. The long nose implies certain mathematical ratios. Man is a mathematical formula. He's made entirely out of numbers. When we transcribe these numbers into letters, we'll understand the meaning of life. We'll understand how we ought to live and what nature wrote in the book. The long nose shows that nature endowed man with a great mind, and the width of the nose shows the width of the heart. And so, the mind moves along a straight line, and the heart along the width. Suppose we have 2 points, one of which is servitude, and the other one, friendship. And the one that begins with servitude will start moving toward friendship. It will reach it and stop. It can't move even 100 millionth part beyond friendship, but it'll stop there. In nature, all these points polarize as they go back and forth, until they form a plane and the heart comes. So, that means love reaches its ultimate limits and stops there. Then a movement along a straight line forms, extending upward. This third line forms the cube. That is, it can be likened to the number 4. Imagine all these things moving. What do you understand when you observe them? The first thing we have to do in life is to find these 2 fundamental points in which love can manifest on the planes of these 2 worlds. We only live in 2 dimensions, not in the third. Climb up on Vitusha. Look from there. You'll see a plane on which all the philosophers will seem very petty. So, contemporary people live in 2 dimensions, whereas love wants breadth. And what is depth? It's the truth. Consequently, with the first movement from servitude toward friendship, a plane forms and love manifests. Then comes the movement of the cube, the manifestation of truth. It means that truth permeates all the directions of the cube and gives meaning to love. Love is not transient. It has intensity. It can only be constant when the truth begins to work. Now you'll ask yourselves, why am I a servant and a slave? Why? Rejoice that you're a maidservant or a manservant, and that you begin your first point in this position. Start studying geometry. You ask, where and how will I draw the first line from servitude toward friendship? See what happens when the young woman's beloved appears in her mind. She no longer seeks anything else, but she constantly looks in the mirror. She examines her nose, her eyebrows, her eyes, her mouth, what the upper and lower lip look like. And she says, today I look prettier than yesterday. Tomorrow she examines herself again and says, all right, now he'll like me. Of course. Is there an artist who doesn't like his nice painting after finishing it? They say, that lady became more beautiful. Of course. When she starts weaving from one of the points to the other one, she becomes more beautiful. This is one movement that shows the meaning of life. You say to yourselves, this is something very abstract. It can't be grasped. No, these topics I touch on aren't abstract. They're the easiest things you can understand, but you struggle with much more difficult things. For instance, to me, it seems much more difficult to chop onions and make meatballs than to find the straight line between 2 points. When you chop onions, your eyes begin to water, to tear up. Why? Your spirit within you says, "Daughter, you're chopping onions. But do you know how much suffering you cause when you study this craft?" This onion chopping shows that we're cruel, cruel people. There's no reason to chop the onion. You should roast it whole. They say about someone, "The person is chopping onion, he's chopping meat." I say, I have a particular opinion regarding the person who chops onion or meat. I don't condemn your life, but I say these are symbols we have to straighten out. You start smashing peppers. You cry again. Why? The pepper says, "Don't chop me." Yes, but the meal has to be a little more red. All of you who listen to me, all of you who study this profound science, say to yourselves, "What should we do now when we return home?" If we don't free ourselves from this fear we have, we won't learn this teaching. I speak to someone on this issue, but he replies, "Good, but we need money in this life, money." And everyone says, "Money, we need money." Well, all right, but how much does a Napoleon cost nowadays? There has never been as much money in the world, as much gold as there is now. But it's not money that makes people happy. Isaiah says, "Come and take from me without money." You say, "Can we do without money?" When you love someone, he comes to you and you give him 1, 2, 3 or more measures of wheat without money. You even give him a whole barn full. Why are you so generous to him? Because he's your friend. You say, "What will be the exchange currency in the future?" Our reply is, friendship. When our lives are based on friendship, friends will be the exchange currency. You say, "When will the entire society turn to this teaching?" Observe the laws that operate within the little acorn that you plant in the ground. It doesn't grow all at once, but it starts putting roots into the ground first, downward and to the side. It polarizes. And after 100, 200, 300, until 500 years, it grows into a giant oak. We must begin with the same law. And there are conditions for this. You say, "When modern society develops, we too will learn this law." Why do you need modern society? All people have their own hopes. I don't judge them for this, but I say that both modern society and the individual need teachers to teach them the laws of nature. For instance, on the physical plane, we can't do without food, without houses. That is, without a body. Within this healthy body, we have to have a healthy brain, healthy feelings, healthy eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. All these things have to open. You say, "This person shouldn't be given so much." No. Why does one receive more and another one less? Every person must be given as much as he needs. Otherwise, there might be an abundance in the market, the consequence of which will be a crash in life. It's the same today. When the world fills up with cannons and grenades, people said to themselves, "What should we do with them? We'll declare a war so we can use them." And indeed, they declared war, and these grenades and cannons were put to work. These grenades and cannons were the inventions of human ingenuity, of servitude. I say, you don't need to produce this. Nowadays, mothers sit and say to themselves, What will be our situation in the future? If you go according to the laws found in nature, if you perceive that feeling of love within yourselves and give it precedence, your lives will change completely. Modern science has shown the influence of suggestion. If someone hypnotizes you, restricts all your abilities, and lets only one feeling manifest in you, you would find yourselves in a hypnotic trance. If this hypnotizer draws a straight line in front of you with chalk and says to you, "You can't go past this line," you really would stop in front of the line and say, "There's an obstacle in front of me here that I can't get through. And I see all the obstacles you have right now as a chalked line." And that evil spirit who wants to hinder you says, "You can't go past this line, and you'll walk just as your father, mother, sisters, and brothers from the past did." You'll respond to him, "No, I believe in friendship." This is why I say that man is not a wolf to a man, but a friend and a brother. Put the word friend in your minds. Make it come alive. In English, in French, and in the other languages, this word is different, but every word has its own vibrations that it forms. Consequently, in an occult sense, in a spiritual sense, the vibrations of the same word in the various languages can be brought under the same denominator. The word friendship has the same meaning in all the different languages. It contains two qualities, namely that you have to get along with your friend, and you must both love each other mutually. When you understand and love each other, you must be equally ready to sacrifice for each other. If you don't have these qualities, you can't be friends. And so, Christ says, "Everything that I heard from my Father, I have made known to you." You will say, "This Father is only Christ's Father, but not ours." Only the servants and slaves speak like this. When a young woman marries and goes to her beloved as a daughter-in-law, doesn't she say "father" to her father-in-law? Why does she call her father-in-law father? She says to the young man, "Your father will be my father, and your mother, my mother." This is the law of friendship. Yet you go to Christ and say, "I can't say father to your father as you do." Can there be a greater abomination than this? And this is something we would consider as pious. You know, if you don't say father to your father-in-law, the son will get offended. No, your father will be my father too. This is the law. Hence, when you come to Christ, you have to think that his father is your father, and that the world in which he lives is also your world. Now, the following question still remains. Who will fix this world, and how will it be fixed? Don't think about fixing this world. It's funny when I hear that someone's pants are worn out, and he wonders how to fix them. I say, throw away these old pants and put on new ones. If you want to fix the old ones, you're only mending them. You say, let's reform the present society. No. Throw away the pants that society wears. They're already falling apart. And make new ones. It's funny to think that these 8,000-year-old pants haven't fallen apart. Throw them away and make new ones, wide enough to walk freely. You say, this teaching is not for us, where our women become free and their eyes open up. Our proverbs turned out to be true. When the blind person begins to see, he sees farther. Or, keep the poor man's head pressed down so he can't see. Or, friendship is not for us. There must be servants in the world. Yes, but there's no better servant in the world than your friend. He who can serve you willingly and lovingly is the best servant. Friendship is the best service. Reflect on the words servitude and friendship. I won't finish the subject of my lecture. I'll let you finish it. I only threw a thought at you, which you'll never be able to get rid of. The earth may turn upside down, but you won't free yourselves from this thought. It'll shake you so hard that your torn pants will disappear. The frozen ice in your lakes will melt. You could fasten them with braces, but all this will disappear. Nothing will prevent the ice from melting. You say, "What will the future world be like?" I say, "The exchange currency of the future culture will be friendship, based on those great principles of mankind, to be wise and loving. If you possess these two principles, you'll have the opportunity to reflect on these issues, to move up into the third dimension. Geometricians know this dimension, but you don't know it. You're unable to move in it. After this, you'll reach the fourth dimension. You already stepped into this horo. You know that when the young woman steps into the horo even once, she's gone. She doesn't return home, and her mother has to say goodbye to her. Her mother says, "My daughter used to listen to me, but now she started flaunting. She goes to the horo. So I finally relinquished her." I say, "Yes, let her go. Let all young women and men dance on this horo. Let the bagpiper play. As long as there's friendship. The world needs a horo now, and the bigger it is, the better. Everyone get on the horo, both young and old, teachers and students, priests and bishops, preachers, scientists, and wise men. Everyone needs to start dancing according to the law of wisdom and love. These two should be applied in life in order to create new forms. You say, it's shameful to have priests and bishops dance. Isn't it shameful if they take money? As a priest, I would prefer to dance in the horo rather than receive money. By priest, I understand father who needs to work freely, so he can set an example for his children. When I say bishops and priests, I understand mothers and fathers. They're the real bishops and priestesses that I can trust. They're the patriarchs that God ordained. Consequently, these mothers and fathers have to serve freely. They need to inspire their sons and daughters with love and to lay a foundation for the future society. Even Christ says, "Every tree is known by its fruit." Sunday, the 25th of April, 1920, Sofia.